Hello everyone, this is Prithvish Pramanik, and today I am going to brief you about what is man in the middle attack. So let's begin. Now to begin with, what is man in the middle attack or MITM? Let's begin with a simple definition. Now man in the middle attack or a person in the middle attack is a very concerned topic in cryptography as well as in cybersecurity, because it is a type of attack in which the attacker secretly relay and possibly alters the communication between two parties who believes that they are directly communicating with each other. It's basically a eavesdropping case in very simple layman's term. Let us consider two parties. Party A, which we will give name Alice, and party B, which we will name as Bob. They are contacting with each other over certain networks. Now they know that their network is secure, but it seems that their network is secure to them only, but it's not all the time. There may be a hacker who hacked into their system and may listen to their conversation. And many times it has been seen that it is very hard to detect that there is a man in the middle who is listening to your conversation between your friends or your clients. So to understand what is our MITM, man in the middle attack, let's understand what is or how the client server architecture works. Now this is how a client server architecture works. Here is a client, a computer. It may be anyone. It may be you, it may be me, or anyone, or any device. Here is a server or a router, and here is the main internet resource. And this router here is the only gateway to this internet or the internet resource. Now whenever a client wants to surf the internet or wants to fetch a data that is present in the internet or communicate between different devices, he has to send a request to this server or router. Now this server or router processes the request, fetches the data from the internet, and sends back a response. It seems pretty easy, no? But it's not, because this client and this router specifies each other by a set of given addresses, which is called the IP address and MAC address. Now IP is the address, it's the specified address over which different devices communicate with each other over internet. And there is also another address called the MAC address, which is specific and unique to that device only. Now when this client wants to surf the internet and sends a request, it sends a request in the form of as if that an IP address is sending, that is 192.168.1.1 is sending a request. Now this is how the whole thing works. The server recognizes this IP, it processes the information and sends back the response, the desired intended response back to this IP. Now this is how the whole server architecture works, client server architecture works. Now let us know about what is man in the middle attack. Now we have known how a client and the server operates or communicates between each other over a network in a very normal condition. But what if a hacker hacks into your system? Now this is what a man in the middle attack is. There is a rogue computer or a hacker between your server and your client. Now what this rogue computer does is it spoofs its IP address. Now what is spoofing IP address? What do I mean by spoofing IP address? Spoofing means it hides itself. its cover itself as if it is present at the client side. Now, when a request is sent to this server, the server sees that it is the client, this original client, as if this original client is sending you the information. So, without any checking, it sends back the response. And what this client sees? The client sees that the response is being sent from the intended server only, from the intended IP address only. So it accepts the response, and thus he is into the system. This rogue computer or the hacker is into the system. Now he will know what request you send to this server, what the server responses are, and accordingly he will manipulate the information and will feed to this client, and this client will fall into his trap, and thus he is becoming more and more vulnerable. He is now vulnerable, in fact, but he will become more vulnerable when more requests and responses are sent through this rogue computer. Because, for example, if you are doing a transaction, suppose this is you and this is the banking server. Now, what if there is someone between you and this bank server? Whenever there is a transaction, it will show you that the bank is requesting the transaction ID, the bank details, and you will provide it without verifying it, because it will see very genuine. And once you provide this information, the bank details, the credit card number, or else or the details that don't need to be shared, or the OTPs which should not be shared with anyone, will be shared with this rogue computer. And once it gets your OTP, your bank details, he will request this server as if you are asking for a transaction of certain rupees, and thus he will use your OTP, your details, and will withdraw the money and put it into his or her account. Now, this is how the whole thing works. It is a very concerned matter. Now, let us see how this man-in-the-middle attack takes place. Now, there are two steps: interception and decryption. This seems to be very simple, but there is a very rigid protocol that is maintained between this client, so it is not so easy to break into the system and get your information, but still things happen. Now, how this thing happens? There are stages in this man-in-the-middle attack. The first stage, it's interception. Without interception, you will not able to enter into the network, and if you don't able to enter into the network, if you are not into the network, you won't get the information of the client or your attackees. Now, how it is done, how these interceptions are done? It is done by different methods, but the most popular are IP spoofing, ARP spoofing, DNS spoofing. And among these three, the most popular is the ARP spoofing. Now, what is ARP? ARP is a low-level protocol which changes MAC to IP address on a local network. Now, in ARP spoofing, the attacker sends fake ARP messages, address resolution protocol messages, to the victim system. The very same thing that happens here that I told you. It is a ARP spoofing technique. Same thing happens in ARP spoofing. Now, what is IP spoofing? The attacker covers himself as an application and changes headers of the IP address. So the client gets to know about the URL. It will get diverted to the URL that the attacker wants you to get diverted. And what is DNS spoofing? Now, DNS spoofing is, in this type of attack, the attacker gets to the server and modifies the site records and coordinates its site records. Okay. Now, to know DNS, you have to search about DNS more, because it's a pretty big topic which is beyond the scope of this video. Now, once you have intercepted into the system, into the network, you have to get the information. But modern systems are such that if you by chance intercept into networks, it will be very hard for you to know, because everything nowadays are encrypted, highly encrypted by very good algorithms, encryption algorithms like SHA-256, which is very hard to break. It's not like MD5. It's one of the toughest encryption that the world has ever seen, developed by the NIA, National Investigation Agency of America. Now, once you are receiving this encrypted message, you have to decrypt it to know what is inside your responses that you are receiving. Now, how that is done? It is done through SSL hijacking, SSL stripping, and HTTPS spoofing. Now, what is SSL hijacking? SSL hijacking is the attacker when the attacker passes wrong keys to the sender and collectors amid of a handshake. Now the attacker now controls the session, even though it looks secure association between the sender and the recipient. What is SSL stripping? SSL stripping, the attacker downsizes the application or site of its SSL encryption. Okay. And what is HTTPS spoofing? The attacker sends a fake SSL certificate. Whenever you surf a website, you might have seen that on this left hand corner over your search bar, next to your search bar where the URL is, there is a symbol of lock. Now what is that lock? It is saying that this site contains HTTPS protocol and has a valid SSL certificate. That means it is very secure. Now when this HTTPS spoofing is done, it sends, the attacker sends a fake SSL certificate. Now when you will get a fake SSL certificate, it will seem that it's very genuine, and you will trust, and you will enter your details, and the rest, the all your information will be hijacked without you knowing about it. So is there any way to prevent a MITM attack, man in the middle attack? Of course there are ways. What are they? Always connect to a secure Wi-Fi. This is the first and the most important point. Never ever connect to a public Wi-Fi system. The Wi-Fi that we see in shops, restaurants, in railways, because you don't know who is sitting behind that router or who is serving your responses. So it's better you use your mobile data always, because mobile data is all time secure. Don't use Wi-Fi just because of speed. The second, use end-to-end protection for emails, messages, etc. Encryption nowadays is very important, because if your message is not encrypted, anyone over internet, if he hacks into the system, your system will become vulnerable, your important mails will become vulnerable, and subsequently you will become vulnerable. Keep your antivirus updated. These antivirus systems are very powerful nowadays. They have a table, they have their prints that can detect a MITM attack in many times. Second, this is also a very useful thing. Use two-step authentication system, because this improves the condition of your privacy. Two-step authentication system is very strong. Then use a password manager. It is very highly recommended. The second last point is connect to only HTTPS connections. And if it is not, if you see that HTTP connections are there or it is insecure, don't serve that site, please, because there is a chance that you may get hacked. Your valuable information may get hacked, may fall into wrong hands. Then God helps. And the last point, try to encrypt the traffic using a VPN. Now, VPN is virtual port network. Okay. Now, VPN protects you by giving you a port number, virtual port number. Now, ports are the gateways, points through which you connect. There are specific ports over which you connect to the internet. Now, if you use a virtual port, it is very hard to detect you, first of all, because the port through which you are accessing the internet is not the actual port through which you are accessing. It's a way around thing. So it's very secure. The VPNs are very secure. So just remember to connect to the secure Wi-Fi. Don't connect to any public networks, public Wi-Fi systems, and try to use VPNs. There are a lot of free VPNs. Just use one of them if you need to connect to a Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi system. But don't do it. And that's all. Once again, thank you all for listening and giving your time. Thank you once again. Have a good day.